welcome to the Life of Learning podcast. I'm Justus Frank, and I was just out Uber driving and I had a few interesting conversations, and I just want to share some of those with you and some of my thoughts around them. The first conversation I'd like to share with you was with a young man. He was in year 12, so what's that, around 16, 17 years old. And actually, I initially mistook him as being older, and when he said something about studying, I thought he was at university, but he was still actually at school. And he said, yeah, I'm in year 12 and I am, one more year of school to go. And then I asked him, oh, do you want to do another year of school? Is that what you want to do? And he sort of replied, well, could you just not do year 13? Is there something else that you want to do? And he said, well, my parents kind of want me to do school, and maybe there's a bit of a stereotype, but he was from an Asian origin, and and it seems often in those cultures, making sure you get that academic university entrance type thing is important. And so yeah, he said he wanted to get university entrance, and I said, okay, well, what would you like to do at university? And he said he wanted to basically go and study film, making films. I didn't realize actually that it was a more university thing these days. I thought it was more a polytech thing, but be that as it may. And then I asked him, oh, okay, so in terms of, so you wanted to make films, and are you doing any of that now already? And I think at first he mistook my question to think, are you studying film already? And he said, well, there is some sort of course. He said something about a course, but he couldn't do it at this present point in time, and things like that. And I was like, no, like, are you already making films? Are you creating films? And he was like, well, no, not really. And so we talked a bit about the fact that, we have this idea that we need to wait to get permission, basically, to make films. And, I said, well, why don't you just get your friends together and start making films? That's what I did at university. I didn't study film. I studied music, but the group of us friends got together and we just started making films. Yes, my sister was studying kind of film, but the rest of us weren't, and we're just using whatever talents we had and helped where we could, and made these awesome films these short films nearly every weekend for a time. And then also we're involved in film festivals and things like that. And so I just encourage them, just, pick up a camera, pick up your phone if you need to, and just start filming and start making these things. And it was a interesting, I guess, mindset that he was in terms of, again, young people have this mindset that they need these qualifications in order to start doing something. And I said, if your passion is making films, why don't you do that now instead of waiting another year until you finish school and then being able to do university and then, studying, and then who knows how long it'll take till you actually make some real films. Why don't you just start now? And he even put this sort of suggestion forward in terms of, I'm going overseas in January, and I said, well, just make a documentary. Whatever you need to do, just start doing it. Don't wait for adults to give you permission to start doing what you really, really want to do. Or for some piece of paper to tell you that that's what you want to do. And we look at a lot of the big film directors and things like that, and most of them didn't start because if they decided to attend a film school and they got their degree and then they became on to be great directors. Most of them were making films at some point in their lives anyway, and they were just interested in making films. And I don't know how many of them have a degree in filmmaking, but I wouldn't think a whole lot of them. But their passion was actually just doing it. And it's just an interesting sort of thing to think about, that so many people have this idea that they need this extra permission to start doing things, and to wait and put it off so much. And probably one of the biggest things that I've wanted to share this for some time, but probably one of the biggest things that I learned through my time of teaching wasn't even so much to do with education as such, if you think about it, but it was this fact that if I had a cool idea that I wanted to do, like with the kids, or what I thought was a cool idea, the best thing to do was actually to do it as soon as possible. Often I'd realize I'd come up with some cool idea, and then I'd be like, oh yeah, I'll do this cool idea sometime when we've got some extra time at some point. And what eventually happened is that often those cool ideas that I had never actually eventuated, because exactly, there was never seemingly the right time to do it, or sometimes it was partially related to a topic, and then a few months down the road we'd moved on from that topic, and it wasn't really it didn't really fit in with anything anymore. And this is just a key part of how we learn, and I think how we grow, is to try and do things when we've got the passion to do them, when we've got the passion to try it, and not wait for some time down the road, because once that time down the road kind of comes, we've realized that we've pushed things on too long, and we no longer have that passion anymore. The time to start doing things is when you get that passion for it, and then that passion can grow, and you can go on to a next step, and become more complicated, and things become more complex, and you can grow. Exactly, for instance, this guy's filmmaking. Once he just starts making films, then you can then step up and create something maybe a bit more exciting. And yeah. Although one interesting comment he also mentioned was, when I was talking about this, he was like, oh yeah, well, I might get this, stability thing for a camera. And I didn't push back too much at that, but again, I think, yeah, if he wants to, go for it. But again, sometimes we get caught up in trying to get all the gadgets right, and getting all the equipment, all the necessary equipment before we start, or all the equipment that we think we need. And again, possibly what I should have said, is just start making films. Don't worry about getting the extra flashy stability things and all the rest of it. Just, get out your phone and make a film with your friends or by yourself. I know when I used to work for the Salvation Army, and I would make educational videos, and I would just make them by myself. It would just be me both directing and acting, and they were kind of interesting, but they were fun to do, and I loved editing them and all the rest of it. And yeah, and this is the thing, just stop waiting for permission, especially if you're young. Stop waiting for permission from adults to start doing what you really, really want to do. Just start doing it if at all you can. And in a sense, that's kind of what I'm doing here. I'm not waiting for this podcast to be the flashiest thing out there. I just want to actually get my thoughts out there and start doing this and see where it goes. And I'm sure I'll improve various things as I go, But the important thing is to actually start doing it. And that's why after I had these conversations, I was like, let's take some of my own advice. And I just basically decided to boost it back home and make this podcast, because I wanted to do this podcast now. I had the passion to do this podcast now. If I put it off a whole lot longer, it would be harder to motivate myself to actually do this podcast. And so often the best time really is now. And one thing, the other thing from this conversation that I feel maybe I missed a wee opportunity, would be just to say, if you decide you are going to make some films, like even some pretty amateur films, and hey, I'll be your first fan. Send them to me, I'll watch them, and it'll be interesting to see your growth through doing this process. But I didn't actually say that to him, and I didn't really think of it at the time, and maybe it would have come across as a little bit creepy, so there is that. But yeah, I think if you do know people in your life who are just giving things a go, be interested in what they're doing. Again, I mean, it's interesting, this podcast. I mean, I get a few views from various friends, but not a lot. And I do find it kind of interesting that maybe not as many friends are interested. And I do try to be interested in what my friends are doing, especially if they are creating things. And I like seeing people be creative. So, yeah. And as a last wee thing, I would add that we often have this idea that it is really virtuous to be struggling through things that we don't really want to do. For instance, I'm not sure really if this guy wanted to do another year of school, or whether he just wanted to actually start making films. Again, possibly you could do both, but we see it nearly as a virtue to do those things that are uncomfortable, that we don't enjoy, and that we struggle through. And that's actually going to be my topic for the next week episode that I'm going to do, which was based on another conversation that I had today. And so I am going to share that with you in just a wee moment. But I thought this is neat enough a sort of package that it is kind of just one episode in and of itself. But yeah, we'll see you in the next episode. So looking forward to that, and we'll see you there. All right, thanks. Bye.